Good evening, everyone, and good evening to those of you online. It's great to be back. As you know, I just came back from a couple of weeks of seclusion, so let's see how those stories, changes, inspirations work their way into everything over the next week or so. So what we'll do tonight, I forget what class it is and even what secret it is, but we're doing the Secrets of Prosperity book, of course. And tonight, Swami says the secret of prosperity is simplicity. So that's what we'll talk about. But let's begin, as we do, with a prayer, a chant, and then a brief meditation. Then we'll have some music, then a discussion. So let's pray together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, Paramhansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, we humbly bow before all of you. Divine Mother, help us to remember always that thoughts and acts of simplicity lead us to deeper inspiration. They take us away from ego consciousness and into soul consciousness, the one goal of this life. Om Shanti, Shanti. Amen.
Reveal thyself, 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 reveal
We'll meditate for just a few minutes, but let's take a moment and make sure that our posture is good, spine straight, shoulders back just a little bit, but relaxed as a means of both straightening the spine and opening the heart. And let's take the simple but profound words of this chant inward, deeply, quickly. Again, asking God, reveal thyself, reveal thyself. Om Shanti. Amen. I just listen to the words of this song. We can't see the singers because we're seated differently tonight. But the secret of prosperity is simplicity. So let's listen.
If you're seeking freedom in a revolution, or if you're seeking freedom, you won't find it there. For once the guns stop blazing, you'll find it amazing how the world can drag on just as before. If you're seeking freedom in a marble mansion,
Oh, if you're seeking freedom, you won't find it there.
for even when it's sunny, you'll be counting money, keeping up that showcase, your face lined with care.
And if you're seeking freedom on a throne of power,
Oh, if you're seeking freedom, you won't find it there.
For though men all obey you, what if they betray you? Tense you'll be and waiting for foes everywhere.
but if you're seeking freedom, cast away desire.
Why far to like a beggar, you've wealth everywhere. For never can you buy it, grasp and you deny it. Freedom can't be hoarded, it's free as the air. And if you're seeking freedom, seek it on the mountains. Got sunlight on your shoulders, the wind in your hair. For there's no one can hold you, boss about or mold you. Once your heart is free, you'll be king everywhere. For there's no one can hold you, boss about or mold you. Once your heart is free, you'll be king everywhere.
Can you pull up the words to that song for me? I just want to pull those words back up because the song just popped into my head a little bit before we came over here. But I was just telling Lakshmi, maybe Shankari was here, it's not an easy topic tonight because it's simplicity. Everything comes back to the same basic line, keep it simple. Keep it simple and you'll be free. Hi there, good to see you. And, but Swamiji has just such a beautiful, poetic way with him, so he's saying to us, and I'm going to read you something else right after this that he wrote, but he's saying, don't look for it in a revolution because you'll fight and you'll fight and you'll fight for something. Then you'll realize when it's over, the world goes on just the way it was. It's like you're out there looking for something. You think you're going to win something, but you don't. You could have just stayed where you were to begin with. And then he says, if you're in a marble mansion, he's saying, even when it's sunny, you'll be counting money. He's saying, if you have your mansion, that's where not just your thoughts, but all of your energy is going to be, as opposed to being outside and being able to appreciate the sunshine, that which is so naturally given, which is so uplifting and simple, exactly. And then the next verse, I was trying to keep up with it because I didn't look at the words before. Of course, we've all heard these words many times. I was impressed. You just jumped right in chanting. I thought, I probably only saw you twice during Raj, but I thought she's been around a lot. This is Jordan, by the way. Jordan took Raja Yoga with us last year after doing a big yoga program in Rishikesh. Now she's just back from doing the follow-up for a 300-hour training and certificate in Bali. Same teachers. So she's having fun in these extravagant places, but keeping it simple. Then it says, if you're seeking freedom on a throne of power. You know, both Swamiji and Master have so many allusions to this in everything that they've written, the little bit that I could find. In our library on simplicity, they're very often referring to kings, but beautifully the way Master can speak about just how lonely kings can be, surrounded by thousands, tens of thousands of people, and you'd think they'd have everything they want, but Master, in that beautiful way of speaking that he does, I mean, just remember that English was not his first language, and it's incredible how he speaks, but just talking about what a lonely life it can be as a king if you think the kingdom itself, not the kingdom of heaven, but the typical kingdom, is going to bring you anything. So he's saying you won't find it on a throne of power, for though men will obey you, what if they betray you? Tense you'll be and waiting for foes everywhere. He just keeps bringing us back to situations in life that we can relate to. It's a song, so we think it's far-fetched, but we have all of these kinds of examples in our own lives. The way that we're certain something's going to bring us happiness or security or stability. And in fact, it has a huge price tag in each instance, and it takes us exactly in the opposite direction. And then this last verse, which is so beautiful. So if you're seeking freedom, seek it on the mountains, God's sunlight on your shoulders, the wind in your hair, for there's no one can hold you, boss about or mold you. And I just love this. Once your heart is free, you'll be king everywhere. Such a beautiful line. Of course, it's the truth. And when we hear truth, it's always simple. It's just not always simple to keep living in terms of it. But I just love that. Once your heart is free, you'll be king everywhere. You know, for those of you who will be here Thursday and then come to Sunday service, I'm sure you'll be hearing lots of stories about this. And I wasn't going to speak about my seclusion tonight, but I have to for a moment. I was gone for just under 2 weeks, not a long time. I was bemoaning the fact as I left, 2 weeks, I want a month, you know. And I think when I last gave service, probably most of you were here, and you heard me tell the story of the hike that we took the day before. We went on this big hike, and I was tense on the hike. Not the whole hike, but by the time we were coming back. And do you remember the story? And I was like trying to rush everybody and come on, because I had to pack to get ready to leave for this seclusion where I was going to go find peace and ease and God. You've all heard this story. There was an Indian man who joined us who just doesn't walk. He doesn't exercise. No, he does. Beautiful soul, deep, deep, lovely soul. And he walks. It's not like he's debilitated, but he's not a hiker. And the whole way back, he was moving so slowly. And I was getting more and more and more anxious. And literally, I mean, Lakshmi can say, or James, they were there. If I'm exaggerating, I don't think I am. What would have been maybe a 30-minute trip home was turning into an hour and a half, maybe even more. Because at some point, and Shantala was with him, and she stayed with him the entire hike. As soon as she realized what was going on, it took about half the way up. And she could see, I kept feeling that I needed to, but wanted to stay back and be the one who would be with him because I was leading the hike and I didn't feel other people should have to do that. It's fun to just go out and hike at your own pace. But she, at some point, took his hand like he was her beloved father. And she walked all the way up that hill with him, just enthralled with him, never rushing him, pure love. I mean, this is not an exaggeration. It's hard to describe. Then we stopped up there, we chanted, we meditated, we had lunch, and all the way down, because it was harder coming down, of course. You know, he was not sure-footed, and there was gravel, and it was all dirt. And as I was getting like, I have to hurry, I have to hurry, I have to go find God, she was finding God right there. It was so amazing. So I went on this seclusion. And it turns out, without a lot of details, that it was, without a doubt, I would say the most God-centered, spectacular, life-changing 12 days of my life. It was really, really profound. It is. It still is. I mean, something shifted. It's not like one of those times where you go away, you're relaxed, you come back, and, you know, I can just feel it. Everything's different. That's it. So without saying more about that, I was in this little 2-bedroom cottage kind of place, and I realized as soon as I got there that if everything I needed from where I was going to have to get in the car and go. And I was going to have to get on the freeway to do it, because like a little isolated village along the coast, south of Santa Barbara. And I thought, this is not going to work. I'm just not being in the car every day. So the next morning, I went shopping. I drove to Santa Barbara, and I found the 2 places where I was going to find the best produce and the best other stuff. And I shopped, and I came back, and I never left again. And I was able to do everything for almost 2 weeks, make absolutely delicious but simple and healthy meals, and have everything I needed right from that little cottage. And I was committed to not going out. I mean, I would go out for a walk, but not being with people. I was really unplugged and secluded, not going into stores, and not wasting anything. It just felt important to me. I really don't like waste, and I really don't like wasting food. But when you're not eating alone all the time, often it's harder to do that. And it was so utterly simple, that life. I don't know if I'm even conveying it well, but I had exactly what I needed, not one extra. I didn't throw away a leaf of spinach. I mean, nothing. And it was all perfect. And it was perfect in its simplicity. I could see the way that and the place was expensive. It's not like it was, it was on the coast in Southern California. It wasn't like it was cheap, but it was away from a lot. And I could feel moment by moment how freeing it was to not have to think about anything in the world, nothing, because I wasn't going to go out again. I had what I had. That's what exactly was going to work. And I'll tell you, this is funny, one funny thing. It's hard to describe the town, and it doesn't matter, but there's it's less than a mile, a road through the town, little street. And then the street by the same name, so here's the street, north and south, there was a little semicircular street that just came off of it. Same name, same everything. So I was over here on the semicircle. But right on that street, right across from where I was, a 45-second walk, was a vegetable stand. In this little town, population of nothing. And they said, we're here every day of the year. Beautiful vegetables, eggs, bread. And it didn't dawn on me. So that's where I went. If I wanted, whatever they had, that's what I cooked. If I needed something. It just couldn't have been more perfect. And then last night I was thinking about it, because it's so impossible. How do they support themselves? What did they do when I left? That's what I felt like. How could they be there? And I said to myself it came to me in meditation. I swear, I know it's not true. I know this is crazy. But I said, did Master just put that vegetable stand there for me? Like, is it gone now? Yeah. Because it made no sense. But it was it could not have been that way if it wasn't that simple. It just couldn't have been. If I had to worry, think about, plan, scheme, anything other than eat when you're hungry, sleep when you're tired, and spend every other minute with God in some form or another. That was the extent of it. And then those 12 days that felt like so short going into it, that had me hysterical the day before I left, felt like an eternity. It was timeless. Isn't that? I'm not saying it so much like it was not about me. I'm really talking about the topic, about how simplicity, if we can help make our lives simple enough, not just externally, definitely externally, to live, there are many people in this room who are old enough to remember this. Cars were not always as complicated as they are right now. Used to be there was an ignition, a brake, clutch, maybe a radio. I'm not kidding. I mean, that's what it was like when I was learning to drive, and for many years after. Now they've become computers on wheels. So it's that kind of a thing. It's a whole other thing. You actually have to learn how to use the computer, even to be able to start your car. I just got a new car, so not that long ago. But this is true. And my partner's son was coming to be with him a little bit. I actually forgot that I was driving my car down south. So I said to Barry, I'd rather Josh didn't drive my car. Let him use your car. It turns out I was taking my car, but I forgot. But I said to him, let him take your car, because I said, most people, Josh doesn't drive a lot. Most people could not just jump into this car and drive. You need days to learn it. And you can't just get in this car and take it out on the freeway and that's it, because it's to a certain degree self-driving. It brings you back into the lane. It stops you if it doesn't like what you're doing. It's a smart car, we got used to smartphones. But in all of the things that we acquire, and it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous little Volvo. I love my car. But there's a complexity to it. It's not as simple as it used to be to drive a car. And so that's the external, that's an example that's the marble mansions and the towers and whatever else Swamiji's talking about. But we do that internally as well. We keep our lives complex because we're lost, because we're turned around, because all the things that we all know, the things that we talk about all the time, because truth is not only eternal, but it's simple. There's just a simple truth about things. And we find, this week I'm giving 4 talks. I'll find 4 different ways to talk about it. But I'm going to say the same thing for all 4 talks. There's just not that much else to say. It is what it is. And when you get into the core of that truth, it is utterly simple. It allows for intuition to flow, which guides so much of what we do. I was looking for these words of Swamiji's. Let me just see where they were. They're not the most exciting words of his, but, here, it's right in front of me. I pulled it up. He's talking about what does simplicity look like in different areas? This comes from a talk where he was talking about the shift of yugas, the shift of time, moving into an age of energy, where ultimately things will be simplified. We're not there. None of us are going to live to get there in this life. But where we don't have to plan things, we won't even have to talk, right? We'll just be able to communicate through pure energy. It's not really where we spend most of our time yet. But this is a talk where he's doing that. But he's showing us how in every area of life, or not every, but however many examples, he said in music, it's from such simplicity, the simplicity that he's been talking about tuning into energy and that leading to intuition, allowing for intuition to flow, is what he's saying. He said that haunting melodies are born. Melodies are, in fact, the product of heartfelt aspiration, not of the sophisticated knowledge of musical notation. So it's just an example. He's saying, here's how simplicity will work in music. In the arts, simplicity, again, means an intuitive flow which transcends the intricacies of intellectual craftsmanship, he says, and he says a few more words, but we've all heard Swamiji use this example, and it's true. He said many people take art classes. A lot of people take a lot of art classes, but how many of those people are painting beautiful and inspiring paintings? Because art has to be simple, meaning it has to be as even more intuitive than it is technique-oriented. I think we've seen that in Ananda many times. You remember the story of the man who came to Yogananda having painted a painting of Yogananda's guru, Sri Yukteswar. And Master looked at it and he said to the man, "How long did it take you to paint this?" And what did he say, a year? He said, "A year." Master said, "It took you a year to paint this?" And the man said, "Oh, I'd like to see you do better." And in 1 week, Master had produced this exquisite painting of Sri Yukteswar. Because it's not about that talent exactly. We're watching it with Jyotish, who did learn a little bit about art, but not that much. It's not like he's taken art classes. He didn't. He decided some years ago, 8, 10, I can't remember, that he would start taking up painting again as a means of expression, of deepening his intuition. It was all about his spiritual growth. And he is producing many paintings of such beauty and depth because they're following his intuition, not the way you hold a paintbrush or all of the rules of painting. Then he says, in politics, simplicity means having the wisdom to understand that a carefully worked out treaty can never take the place of genuine kindness and goodwill. And isn't that true? Who would have thought about that, to write about that with politics? Yet it's so important about politics. We need to move back to that place of simplicity. We need to show people that we care about them. That's what we need. I've often said, and I really believe this, that, I went through medical school, and I've said many times to all of you, I used to say I'm not smart. Well, that's just absurd. I can't believe I said that for so many years. What I meant was, and what is true, is that I'm not intellectually either interested, I'm not that interested, I don't love there, but I don't have a big fund of knowledge and sort of not interested in acquiring it. So I used to say I'm not smart. Well, that wasn't true. But when I think about it, and I think about having developed, with their help, the third largest medical practice in the entire United States. You've all heard me say it so much, but it's huge. It's huge. Kaiser caps their patient limit for every doctor at 1,500. You can never have more than 1,500 patients. I had 6,000 for years. Now, why did that happen? I was never the smartest doctor. I was smart enough. I wasn't, you can't be stupid and be a doctor. You don't want to be stupid. You need to remember what congestive heart failure looks like, or, pneumonia or whatever it is. But that wasn't it. People felt cared about. There was a heart there. There was somebody actually asking them a question and then listening to the answer. And that is remarkably rare. Remarkably rare. So how are we going to feel about our politicians? Would we rather have somebody who might need to look up some facts every once in a while? I'm just making this up. I'm not alluding to any of the candidates today at all. It's not that. It's that if people feel cared about, energy shifts. There's a willingness. There's an understanding. They will want to do whatever you tell them is needed. Yeah, this is in politics. Simplicity means having the wisdom to understand that a carefully worked out treaty, he's just using a treaty as an example, can never take the place of genuine kindness and goodwill. And it's true. Now again, you can't be stupid and be a politician in a meaningful position. We don't want a stupid, what does that even mean? But, we like to know that our senators or our presidents or whoever they are on the ball. They're watching out for us. They're taking care of business. But if they are kind and they care about people, it will go a long way. We will feel very pleased with them. They come in. I'm going to share another story with you because they're examples. I recently had to, I'm perfectly fine, absolutely nothing's wrong in the end, but I needed to see a cardiologist. I was having some atypical chest pain and, it gets dramatic very quickly. Anyway, I was in the emergency room, a lot happened, but I needed some follow-up tests. So there are many cardiologists in this area whose practices I helped grow because I had a very busy internal medicine practice. They would need to see a cardiologist. I would pick and choose. So I find one of those practices in Redwood City where all of those guys who are younger than me, coming out of Stanford, but going to practice at Sequoia. That's a lot of what happened. That story's not important. But so I found one of them. And so his front office person said, he doesn't really have anything till the end of September, but let me tell him who's calling, Dr. Rubenstone. Let me see. She did. He agreed to see me. He will go unnamed. I went up to see him, and he never let me finish a sentence. It didn't matter. He knows me. He knows I'm a physician. He knows I was a good physician. He knows a lot. It has been a long time since I've been near anybody that arrogant. And no matter what came up, like he wanted me to start on cholesterol medicine. And I said to him, but why? We just looked at my coronary arteries. I'm 77 years old. They're perfectly clear. We just did a stress echo. You stopped me because I was just going to keep going. My heart's perfect. Why do I need it? And he said, because I'm telling you, you need to be on it. So then we go through, he makes a little bit of an argument. It was absurd. I said to him, I don't want to risk getting that pain in my legs. That's bogus. We have all these studies. Statins do not cause any pain ever. It's a fallacy. This is how he's talking to me. So I said, let me consider going on it. But I said, you just put in an order for how many milligrams? He said 40. I'll stop after this example, but I want to make a point. I said, doesn't it come in lower doses? Yes, but I put in 40, so that's what I want you to take. Well, you know, I mean, I didn't say a word to him because somebody like that, they're not going to listen. And I have not run into, was he smart? Maybe, I don't know. Honestly, I started looking up everything he said in journals, like what percentage of people actually get muscle pain from statins. Well, it turns out it's about 12%. That's not zero, you know, but it was, no, that's bogus, just like that. So I don't care. I mean, first of all, I didn't believe most of what he said, but in large part, probably because of the arrogance. His secretary said to me, he wants you to make a follow-up, so I've made this for you. She hands me the card. Like, do they think we might have a life? We might need to decide. Anyway, I left and I went home and got online and canceled the appointment. But it would have been so easy for him to say, you know, if you're reluctant, of course, let's start you on a lower dose. Very slight incidence that you'll get muscle pain. Extremely, extremely low incidence of this type of chest pain ever becoming a major cardiac event. But not zero, so for that reason, maybe we should put you on a statin. I mean, if he had spoken to me differently, exactly what Swamiji's talking about here. And he goes on, he talks about it in business, recognizing that more profit results from creative energy than from a detailed analysis of sales. He's saying, and he just goes on, I don't need to read it, but I will tell you this. Swamiji says, in every field of endeavor, simplicity will mean our having to learn less intellectually. He was talking about some future time, as we tune in more to inspiration. And we'll find that inspiration flows the more freely, the more open we keep our hearts and minds to its appearance. So in other words, the more that we know that inspiration will flow, the more we start to count on it, it will flow more readily. And he's saying here, in every field of endeavor, we won't have to practice and learn. I remember once in medical school, it's hard to remember this, but a computer was a room. It took up a room. And, but they were coming around. And, you know, we had to memorize, I mean, literally, I would say billions of facts. I think it probably was billions. And I used to say to everybody, the professors, the deans, everybody, why are we having to memorize this? And then we sit down and I was serious. Why, we know we're just going to be able to go look it up. So why do we have to memorize? I mean, years of our life spent memorizing when we could see where computers were going and what was going to happen. And of course, it's true anyway. We all look up everything when we need to know it. It's just so amazing. I mean, Swamiji was predicting all of this and speaking to it, and it's so beautiful. So again, he is saying, he and Master say, keep it simple, earn more than you spend. What did Sri Yukteswar say? Don't live beyond your purse. Master says at some point, it's easier to spend money than it is to earn it. And it's easier to spend money than it is to save it. And it's true for the vast majority of people. This is true. That does not lead to an experience of simplicity. It doesn't. Deciding to live with less, and I mean less of almost everything, and to tune in intuitively to things in every field, in every aspect of life. This is what Swamiji is talking about in terms of simplicity. So he's saying the secret of prosperity is simplicity. He's writing 30 secrets. I just say it for you, one for every day of the month. This little book is about prosperity, but he's written 25 secrets books, or 26. So every day of the month, he says the secret of prosperity is, and he gives you an answer. And all of them, he's talking about prosperity in the truest sense of the word, not in the material world. But even here, he's saying you'll earn more money, you'll be more prosperous, you'll be more successful if you live in terms of these secrets, every one of them. And he says, this is, he's referring to, you remember how Master said when he talks about St. Francis, because St. Francis lived in a particular time. He lived right at the lowest moment of Kali Yuga. So, I mean, it was dark and it was terrible, and people just, everything was hard, stone, rock, sort of as concrete and black and white as it could be. So St. Francis, I've always felt, wow, what a hard job he had. You know, that was really a hard job. Master complained because he didn't complain, but I'm just saying, he sort of mentioned that he had to live through 3 major wars. His life was about 3 major wars, and he talks about who didn't have any wars. I forget who he said. I mean, they don't really care what they lived through, but when, St. Francis, one of many things, he used to talk about Lady Poverty. It looked like he worshipped poverty. That really wasn't what he was getting at, but it would have looked that way to people. Mostly what he was doing is say, we will not find God, means we will not have an experience of the divine in our heart, which is where we're looking to experience God, if we don't live simply. We can't. We won't. We're out there. We're being sidetracked. We're taking care of business. This is why Master said seclusion is the price of greatness. It is. I really felt it in the last couple of weeks. You can't do that on the go, what I did. You can't. And it's not, I'm not saying me. I mean, it was like I was just put in that position, and I'm telling you, it happened. But it's going to be a whole other experience to have that continue to happen here now. It's not impossible, and I'm feeling it, but it's different. It's different because the phone rings, texts come, computers are there. You know, no matter what we do, you put an away message on your email. You figure out how to put automatic replies on your text messages. But I forgot to ask Lakshmi to help me with WhatsApp before I went away. So I get home, and there's all these WhatsApps. And of course, these people are probably wondering, I'm surprised they weren't writing to Lakshmi saying what happened to Shanti. So everybody's used to be responding. But if you're not extremely thoughtful, and if you don't train everybody around you, which is something I'm thinking about right now, because how really are all of you trained with me? If you didn't hear back from me for a day, you'd worry about me, because I'm just like right there all the time. You don't even wait 5 minutes to get a response to a text or an email. I've lived like that. My whole life I've lived like that. And so I've just said to myself, it's not just retraining for you, it's retraining for everybody. You know, what if I'm not as available all the time because I have an appointment with God? And those appointments are going to grow longer and longer. But that's where simplicity is. And we need to slip back into it because we've come so far out of it, meaning in this human condition. Just by nature of being human, we've come out of it. And it's very, very complicated to recreate that in the midst of a life that we're living. But I just want to reiterate, not impossible. I see it right now. And I'm pretty sure that I have it this time. We'll see how it goes. Ask me about this in January. He says an interesting thing here. He says, money and possessions, like every delusion, are harmful principally in ego's strengthening consciousness. And it's just so true that in like every delusion does sort of stem from the ego. So you can always bring it back to our egos and their demands. But he says it, they're harmful principally because they straighten the ego. I knew I was going somewhere before, so I want to finish my thought about St. Francis. I was just asking myself, you didn't ever finish that thought. So he always talked about Lady Poverty. He taught all of they weren't called friars, they were called friars, who came with him, that they were allowed to own nothing. They had to give everything away. Many of the wealthiest people in Assisi, who had real wealth at the time, had to leave everything behind. And many of them would say, but if I bring it, I could feed us. No, he wouldn't have it. He did not want to tempt anybody with anything that could lead to attachment. He was moving towards complete non-attachment. He wasn't calling it that way because it wasn't Dwapara yet, but it's what it was. So he called that Lady Poverty. But when Master started speaking to us, and he calls St. Francis his patron saint, they're of course, they're connected in Christ consciousness, they're connected in truth. But he said, let's call it Lady Simplicity, because it's a different time, and he's trying to share a different message. He's trying to share with us all of what we were just talking about in terms of intuition flowing and inspiration coming and energy. Francis couldn't have spoken like that. It was just virtually impossible. Nobody would have known what he was talking about. Nobody. Or how many of you are watching The Chosen? Anybody? Yeah, a few of you. So it was part of my daily ritual to watch an episode. It was very inspiring for me. So I've caught up with all of The Chosen. But near the end of this last season that's out, season 4, this is the story of the life of Jesus that's just done particularly well, I think. The man who wrote it captured the spirit of it. It's not, you really feel like you're with Jesus and Simon and Peter and the disciples. It's pretty impressive. But anyway, he realizes that he's getting closer to the end of his time. And he's trying to share the deepest teachings with them. And he's trying to say to them, because they're saying, this is so hard. Why are you taking us into Jerusalem? They were already trying to kill you. Why would you want to go back there? And he's saying, are you with me or not? Will you come with me? That's where that famous line comes, where Peter says to him, Master, what else would we do? It's so beautiful, and it's so beautifully portrayed in this. But Jesus is saying, this is what I've been trying to teach you. It's going to get so much more difficult. And they're saying, well, why don't we just do this and do this? And they're trying to organize it out here. These are his closest disciples. You can really feel how the humanness of them would not allow them, and the times, that was before Francis. It really was in the depths of Kali Yuga. It was dark. They stoned people to death, or they put nails through your body. It makes infusions of whatever they infuse people with to kill them these days. The whole idea is grotesque, but at least it feels much more human in a way. Much more not human, but what's the word? Humane. Yeah. It was brutal. But you could just see his pain as he realizes those minds, those souls, just where they were not going to get it. And he saw that, and he's in so much pain about it. Like they can't be here with me. They can't. And I'm just saying it because then Francis came later. So he had to talk about things the way he did. But Master turned many of his words around to suit us, so that they were more suitable for what how we're trying to grow spiritually than anything that Francis or Jesus could say to their people. Yeah, Swamiji's talking here. You know, he wrote that work, Material Success Through Spiritual Principles, right? And it's a big study guide, and it's big and it's expensive and it takes a long time to go through it. They're changing all of that. But that didn't take off initially the way everybody wanted it to, because it's an extraordinary work, extraordinary. We used to teach it here years ago when it first came. But then he started what was called the Akash teachings. Some of you know them. So a much shortened version of Material Success Through Yogic Principles. And in one of the chapters there says simplicity is the key. And he focuses a lot on simplicity. But I'm just going to read you 2 lines from it, and then we'll share whatever stories or examples you'd like to share. He says, simplicity, this is how he opens this teaching, is not grinding poverty. Now again, he's not even talking only about material poverty, just to say that. He said, it's not the polar opposite of wealth. To live simply is to pursue a quiet path of moderation in a life of balance between opposite extremes. In a life of balance between opposite extremes lies inner happiness. And it's so wise. You know, he's not saying give up everything. He's not saying you have to. And it's always a play on words here, because what's in the material world and what's in the spiritual world, all of these terms work. And then just a little later, he said, happiness is mankind's true and native state of being. Few people find it, for most of them live at their periphery. They extend themselves as far as possible from their center within. And that is really true. I mean, that is the essence, in a way, of Hatha Yoga, though I could imagine finishing that sentence in many ways. What's the essence of Hatha? But it's to find that place of perfect balance, not because we're trying to be acrobats, but because when we can do that, it means that we've come inside spiritually. Calmness, centeredness, peacefulness, enough that we can do that. You bring most people in off the streets, they can't even do the tree pose, keeping their foot on the ground, because they're out of balance. They're always out here. That's what Swamiji's saying here. That's not a simple life. You're always out of balance. You're always just trying to catch yourself one way or another. Come back to the center, he's saying here. Now, I have pages of notes, but let me just stop for a few minutes and just ask if anybody has either questions or stories or examples, comments, anything.
I have always lived a simple life.
You've always lived a simple life.
Yes, meaning not a lot of money and always lived within my means. I always knew how to do that. But the simplicity for me now is in the choices that I'm making on a daily basis, for example, eating at home rather than eating out, not because we're trying to save money, but because it's healthier for us and we can feel the difference. When you look at it that way, it's easy to stay home. And that decision to go out and get a pizza, or do you want to just make this, let's just make that. It's just simple. And also dealing with other people. The relationships that I have with other people are just, I'm trying to simplify. Not to get out of something, but to try and get into as much as I can with each individual without all the, all the stuff that goes with trying to make friends. Simplicity is my move these days.
Good. And I'm only going, I love what you're saying, and of course, all of those things, whether it's not eating out as much for many reasons. Certainly because of the money, also because of the environment that we most often, or very often, have to put ourselves in. The food has a higher vibration when we eat at home, even with all of the healthy restaurants that we have, and we do. Our own food in our own kitchens has the highest vibration. And many more things. I'm repeating it, so I want you to know that I heard you. But it's very interesting because you always live simply materially, maybe. But I don't think you always lived a life of simplicity. And I think it's important to say it only because we're not really only talking about the material world. So depending on the environments that we were raised in, what was going on in our homes, what did we need to contend with, how did we learn to take care of ourselves? Were we praying every day? Were we meditating? Just what? All of it. That's the life of simplicity. They talk a lot. I have pages and pages of stuff here. Much of it is through analogies in the outside world, the material world, because it's easy to see that. But it's not the main point. That's why they're saying, we don't need you to be poor. We need you to live within your purse. But simplicity goes so much further than that. And ultimately, let me just think about where this just came up. Oh, I remember, and I'll share the experience, but not the people. Just today, somebody was saying to me that in their effort to become centered, they wanted to start taking at least a day a week of seclusion and do many things. Now, those are all good things. But what came out of that conversation was also that at some point, we can stay in that quiet, centered, intuitive place where inspiration can flow, no matter where we are or what we're doing. That's the point of the story that I always tell about Ram Dass, Western Ram Dass, who he was around when I was growing up. He's the first person who spoke to any of us about spirituality. And he used to always say in his talks, I was there for many of them, if you're really in deep meditation, you could sit right at the corner of 5th and Madison in New York. Now you can relate to this. David just came back from New York. 2 weeks in New York. And stay at noon. Noon means lunchtime. You can't imagine the I said to the person I was talking to, I said, it's a little like a crowded street in Mumbai. It's not exactly like that, but with the masses of people. But when I said to him one day, Ram Dass, you say that all the time, but do you do that? And he looked at me and he goes, of course not. Why would I? It's just like, yes, we could say that. Yes, starting with a day a week and hours a day. But soon, the simplicity, the centeredness, that ease. I know this is what you were saying. And I only wanted, it stays with us. It moves. It is us. We don't have to keep coming back and finding it again. But the only point I wanted to make is just for all of us to be thoughtful, because simplicity isn't simply, I didn't have a lot of money, so I lived simply. I wasn't buying fancy clothes or fancy cars, or I lived that way too. But to be able to live a simple life and to take care of ourselves to do it, so that most of us don't want to go into a lot of those restaurants. And
I was thinking while you were...
I don't think it's on. Now, yeah.
I was thinking that simplicity is a lot more than I think we notice ordinarily. At least it was for me when I was thinking about something that happened recently where I could have reacted in maybe a past behavior, which would have been to push it, to rush it, to get it done, to make it happen, to do a lot of things. And I just didn't do it. And it resolved itself. And this was a simple thing, and these were the gophers in the garden. And the gophers in the garden needed him to put the traps out. And I asked him once, and he said, well, yeah, I got the traps and blah, blah, blah. But I never said another word. And today I said, I'm going to call David and tell him to forget it. I think the gophers are gone. They're gone. So it was like, the simple thing would have been to just kind of like wait and see, or not rush into trying to make something happen. Right, or whatever. I mean, you could use it in the kitchen, you can use it anywhere, wherever it is, with your family, if I'm with expectations, with wishes, all of those things.
Yeah.
And just keeping it simply as a way of accepting it as is.
Yeah. Well, this is so, I love what you're saying, because how many times I want to say I say to people, because I do say it to people, but I'm always listening myself. I'm not arrogant in this way. But we're not just beings of energy, which of course we are completely and only, but we have been brought onto a path that is designed to show us that and teach us that. So we, more than many people, even on many other paths, though most true paths would communicate this one way or another, if we change our energy, if we work in here, everything changes. So, I grew up at a time where people would sit and ask the ants to leave their house. They would just talk to the ants. It was a big new thing then. If you talked to the ants and asked them to go, or whatever it was. We were talking to everything in those early days, but the truth is, there is something to it. Because I hope the gophers are actually gone, completely gone, but whatever they were picking up, and they do pick that up, that it was time for them to go. It worked. So the more that we can fine-tune our energy, we find ourselves having impacts that they look like miracles. I mean, I wasn't really kidding, honestly, when I said it came to me last night. I wonder if that vegetable stand was just materialized there, because I needed it. and I was being given a gift. Now, on the one hand, I go, that's ridiculous. They told you they're there. But you know, it was just the most unlikely thing. And then I think, of course Master would do that for me. Of course he would. I knew it going into the seclusion. This is going to be deep. It's going to happen quickly. I was sure that it was going to be profoundly life-changing. I just knew that. So why wouldn't he put a vegetable stand there for me? Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Want to do it, and I just was not really feeling like I wanted to
Yeah.
I just wanted to let it be. But the same thing, I know, so Divine Mother said, okay, we'll
Yeah.
move them to the next yard,
Yeah.
you know.
No, it's true. And they pick that up, and I think particularly, I mean, you know, rodents, I don't exactly love them. I try and remind myself they are also just manifestations of God. I don't even know if a gopher's a rodent, but it looks like one to me. But whatever they are, they operate a lot with that, you know, why don't they go running into walls? How do they know to go under the fence instead of into it, or whatever it is? They're aware, they're sensing. So if you put out that energy, you know, it's actually better for you to not be here. Or even more strongly, it doesn't surprise me.
And that's actually just what I said.
Yeah. You'll do better off next door. They want you more than I do. Anybody else?
But it was simple then, you know. A simple answer is just
Yeah. Yeah. Simplicity. Yeah, I know.
ordinary.
I was just thinking it's not really anything different than what we're saying, but I was appreciating the subtlety of the point that's being shared here, because when, no, oh, it is. Yeah, it was. I appreciate the subtlety of the point that is being shared here because, you know, on the one hand, our lives are never going to be simple. You know, we incarnated at a time, our karma is such that we live right here in a crazy world at a time when things are just, you know, there's so much that needs to happen and be done every day. And so if we're looking for simplicity in the way that our lives are organized or outside of ourselves in any way, we're never going to find it. But I was thinking about the saints, and I was thinking about Swamiji, and I was thinking about all of these examples we have of people who love God, and what true simplicity and prosperity is, you know, the simplicity of where's our motivation coming from, and are we acting for God? You know, I mean, what Swami Kriyananda did was about as complex as anything that anyone can do in their lives. He built a spiritual community that's a worldwide spiritual community and faced into a lot of joys and struggles all along the way. But I promise you that if he were sitting right here, he would tell you how simple it is, because there was one motivation, which was to please God. You know, you go into seclusion in order to please God, and by please God, we mean share with God, love God, be one with God. And he manifests, whether for an eternity or for the 12 days you were there, a vegetable stand so that you could be fed. And it's just, you know, our lives could actually be so simple if we just ask ourselves, is what I'm doing pleasing God? Am I doing this to please God? Am I eating this food to please God? Or am I eating the pizza to please myself? Am I, you know, it's just, it's so simple, and it can come into every moment of our lives, and that's how we manifest prosperity, and that's how simplicity comes. So it's just, I've just been appreciating the subtlety of that, because it's so easy to say, well, my life's never going to be simple. Think of it, I mean, I have 6,000 patients and 5 different, you know, practices throughout my life, and then a congregation full of people. Nothing about it is simple, but when you sit back and, you know, you practice Kriya, and you're practicing Kriya to love God, it is quite simple.
It's very well said. And that's part of what this discussion that I was sharing with this woman today, where she was asking me a lot of questions about time for sadhana. And of course, we're hopefully all doing sadhana. But the truth is, I could hold that peace while I was working 14 straight hours seeing patients. I loved I was serving God consciously and thoughtfully. So that's what's happening there. You don't need to be in a cave practicing Kriya. Swamiji, who, like you said, what could be, in a worldly sense, more complex than what he did? But, and I don't know if he would say it was simple, but your point's very well taken. But he always said, he said this many times, thus you've all read it, heard it. His litmus test was whether something disturbed his inner peace or not. If it disturbed his inner peace, he just wouldn't go there. And it's so meaningful to be willing to live your life around that. That's the center, inner peace. I mean, we can substitute a lot of words there, but I've told Lakshmi this, but one of the things I did on the seclusion was I took a book with me called Padre Pio and I. I happen to love that saint. I had a very deep experience when I was near his body in Italy and in his temple. He's Catholic. I mean, I know nothing about Catholicism, zero. I mean, when I was reading this book about him, I was constantly looking up words. What is the Eucharist? What does that mean? I don't know. When his disciple who's writing this book says he recited the rosary 50 times every day, and he kept saying 50 times every day. Well, I didn't know what that meant. What is the rosary? I didn't know. But so I had to keep looking things up. But let me just make sure I get back to what I was responding to something that's so taken with this book, because whatever I was starting to say, this man never left he went from his cell to the main church right outside of his cell, back to his cell. He never went anywhere. If he couldn't, he had received a stigmatic. He was in excruciating pain every minute of every day. He received them as a young man, and every day they bled and it hurt. You'd feel these huge nails through your body all the time. I mean, it's really something to be that purely identified with Christ, that can happen. I really got that from this book. But if people thought they saw him somewhere else, they knew he was bilocating because he never went anywhere else. He was always right there. He lived in this just tiny little cell. And he's a very stern-looking man, actually, for those of you who have seen him or pictures of him. Really stern. And I mean, if ever you see a picture with even the hint of a smile, it's sort of surprising. Such a beautiful soul. He was absolutely an embodiment of love, pure love. So he had this really hard life in a way, but it's not and he says, I suffer. I'm suffering. Excuse me, I got the hiccups, which is ridiculous. I don't get them very much anymore, but my doggy doesn't. I always feel sorry for him. He doesn't seem to mind them, though. Anyway, I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought, but what I want to say is, when you're living in God consciousness, I mean, I just came out of there knowing this, not just saying these words. I know this, and I felt it in him. So that book became such a meaningful part of my seclusion, right at the core of it, because he refused to be anywhere but in love with God, or with God in love. He just didn't go anywhere else, just like Swamiji would say. I mean, very much what you're saying. And when you when one does that, that's your life. You don't see your life. You see your life as like, wow, what a magnificent life. That's not who Padre Pio was. He didn't express himself like that. Swamiji did. You know, Swamiji could have been in the hospital 10 times in the previous year. And then the doctor says to him, how's your health? Oh, perfect. Excellent. You know, that's where he was. That's what he was living. Where we decide to be and practice it. And I know this is a part of what you were saying. That's right where we are. It's not easy because, again, we're being pulled out. But the less we allow that, the more we can live in that place of perfect simplicity, which is then perfect spiritual prosperity. And you can have the most gorgeous car, as many pairs of shoes as you want. You can, like whatever, magnificent home, doesn't matter, as long as you're not for even an instant thinking that your happiness will come from there. The minute you think you need it or your happiness is there, that's it. Then you've lost it. But if you don't think that, and that's really what happened with Swamiji. Swami loved beautiful things. Every home he ever had was gorgeous. People gave him gifts, but he also bought beautiful things, spectacular chandeliers and pieces of furniture that were made in Bali and shipped. And but when it was time for him to leave the US, he just walked out of the Crystal Hermitage. He just left it. He didn't move to Italy and miss his things. So it's just so incredible to be given an opportunity to live these teachings consciously and thoughtfully and with energy and bringing great effort to it. And the more minutes of the day that we can do that until it becomes second nature. Nobody had to tell Padre to say the rosary. Nobody had to, you know? And I will say this, in 2 weeks, I almost never put my mala down. I just became a thing. I was just going to practice, and particularly as I was reading what Padre was doing, I say, if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. I don't know how to do the rosary, but something. And here's what I realized. I couldn't, for those of us who know Kriya, but it's just a meditation technique, but we count on beads. And I, as a rule, do 108 Kriyas every day. That's not morning, that's not important, but I do. So where do you go from there in seclusion when you have every minute that you're not sleeping, you could be doing Kriya. But I can't do that. I couldn't just keep practicing that technique. Only now is it dawning me that I probably should have, because by about day 3, I might have left my body. But what I did was I used those beads for something. All day, I would use them. So when I wasn't doing Kriya, other than when I was cooking, literally, even as I was watching The Chosen, constantly, and I would practice Hang Sa on it. I don't know if you know, so just practice Hang Sa, a bead, Hang Sa. Or, because I was reading this book and Padre used to say the Lord's Prayer all the time, I started reciting the Lord's Prayer. It's a beautiful prayer. Swamiji said it's the most important thing Jesus ever wrote. Our Father, one bead, who art in heaven, another bead, hallowed be thy name. Just whatever Sanskrit mantra and chant constantly with those beads that became the embodiment of living with God. It's amazing. I mean, it takes you somewhere. Not that you try to go there. You make the commitment. You bring the energy. You do the practice. And then before you know it, you're just living there. I don't know how to say it any better, but these are important things, because how else do we move ourselves away from all of the attachments that we have. Some of them so understandable, just so perfectly understandable. But as long as it's part of our ego consciousness, it's holding us back. Everything we do in this life is to move from ego consciousness to soul consciousness. So if my mala was going to help me, perfect. And then soon you start feeling, oh, this is how you do it. This is how you. And then as I said, and I'm not really joking, but now comes the hard part. And to stay there, because what do I do here? I'm here, I'm with all of you. I talk, we share time, I teach, I cook a meal for Master's Kitchen. It's all serving God. It's all serving God. I just have to remember that. Everything, this is what you were saying, am I wrong? Everything can be serving God. Everything. We just have to remember. Otherwise, soon we're fighting with this one in our head, or we're criticizing that one, or we're wishing things were different than how they are. That does not get us there. That is not simple. Yeah, I don't think that's grammatical, but it doesn't matter. That's what the name of the book is. The translator decided to do that. But it's, I had to just get over it. I wanted to scratch it out and write me, but I didn't. It's a really, really beautiful book. Because the truth is, he of course he was a Franciscan priest, a Capuchin they're called, but whatever he was, very Catholic. Very Catholic. But it didn't matter. He was living the same truth that they're living, exactly the same. I felt totally close with them while I was so in love with this soul. I just can't put it into words. I just can't. I hope to be able to go to Italy and find this disciple, except I have to hurry because I think he's about 88 or 89. Beautiful soul, very high soul. They call themselves a spiritual son. But, a miraculous story of how Padre called him out of a crowd. And that was it. Your life's forever changed. So I've never heard anybody other than Samadhi be able to describe what it really means that God is love, and that love lives right in our center, in our heart. And that is what God is. And all we need to do is meet him, but become one with that essence right here, right in our heart chakra. And we found God. We talk about it, and we talk about it, we talk about it. But it's like the musk deer, We forget. Go into your heart. Do it in your heart. And this man just says it so beautifully that he makes God's love a living reality. At least that's how it was for me. Let's see. Yeah. So, all right, friends.